The Black Veil Bride of Blackthorn Manor, people in Blackthorn, don't celebrate weddings after sunset. Not anymore. They used to decades ago, when the town was full of laughter, music, and candlelit halls. But now, as the sun dips behind the hills, every window closes, every door locks, and the old church bell rings once. Not for prayer, for warning. I didn't know any of this when I arrived. My name is Ariba Malik. I was 19 when I first stepped into Blackthorn, a quiet village tucked deep within the countryside of northern England. I had come from London, chasing something simple, a fresh start, a new life, maybe even a little adventure. Instead, I walked straight into a story people were too afraid to tell. It began with a letter, a thick cream-colored envelope with a wax seal, delivered to my flat on a rainy afternoon. I almost threw it away, thinking it was some kind of advertisement, but then I saw the name written on it. To Miss Ariba Malik, you have been selected. Selected for what? Inside was a formal invitation. You are invited to serve as a companion and assistant to Lady Eleanor Whitmore at Blackthorn Manor. Accommodation provided. Generous salary. Immediate joining requested. It sounded strange. Almost too perfect. I didn't know anyone named Whitmore. I hadn't applied for anything like this. And yet, something about the letter felt intentional, like it had been waiting for me. Looking back now, I think it had. The journey took nearly 6 hours. The further I traveled, the quieter the world became. The city faded into fields and forests, then narrow roads that twisted like they didn't want to be followed. By the time I reached Blackthorn, it was already evening. The village was small, too small, rows of old stone cottages, narrow paths, and a silence that felt heavier than normal. No children playing, no music, not even the sound of televisions through windows. Just stillness. The driver who had brought me there refused to stay. Not after dark, he muttered, avoiding my eyes. What do you mean? I asked, but he didn't answer. He just drove away. And that's when I saw it. Blackthorn Manor. It stood at the edge of the village, slightly elevated, surrounded by twisted trees that seemed to lean toward it. The structure itself was enormous, Gothic, ancient, with tall windows and blackened stone walls. It didn't look abandoned, but it didn't look alive either. As I approached the gates, they opened on their own. I told myself it was just the wind. Inside, the manor was beautiful, but cold, too cold. The walls were lined with old portraits, most of them faded, their eyes following me as I walked. Chandeliers hung from high ceilings, their light dim and flickering like it struggled to stay alive. And then I met her, Lady Eleanor Whitmore. She was standing at the top of the staircase, dressed entirely in black, tall, pale, elegant, and smiling. "Miss Malik," she said softly, her voice echoing slightly through the hall. "We've been expecting you." There was something about the way she said that made my skin crawl. She led me inside without asking any questions. No interview, no explanation, just acceptance. "You'll be assisting with preparations," she said as we walked. "Preparations for what?" She stopped, turned slowly, and smiled wider. "A wedding." Something about that word felt wrong. "Whose wedding?" I asked. There was a pause, a long one. Then she said, "My daughter's." I never saw her daughter that night, or the next, but I heard her. Soft footsteps in the corridors after midnight, the sound of fabric dragging across the floor, and once, a faint whisper outside my door. "Is she ready?" I didn't sleep much after that. Days at the manor felt strange. Servants moved quietly, rarely speaking. And whenever I asked about the wedding, they avoided the question, except for one, an old caretaker named Thomas. I found him near the garden, trimming dead branches. "There's no wedding," he said without looking at me. My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" He finally turned. His face was pale, eyes tired. "There hasn't been a wedding here in over 50 years. A cold wind passed between us. Then what are we preparing for?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he whispered something that never ended. "That night, I saw her. It was past midnight. The manor was silent. and I couldn't sleep, so I stepped out of my room. The corridor was dark, lit only by faint candlelight, and at the far end, she stood, a bride, dressed in white, but not clean white, old, stained. Her veil covered her face completely, and her head was slightly tilted, like something was wrong with her neck. I couldn't move. She didn't walk. She glided, slowly toward me, and as she got closer, I heard it, a faint sound, crying, coming from beneath the veil. He didn't come. My chest tightened. He promised. Her voice cracked. He left me. She stopped right in front of me. And then she lifted her veil. I screamed because her face wasn't a face anymore. It was broken, distorted, like time had tried to erase her. And her eyes were completely black. You're not him, she whispered. And then everything went dark. I woke up in my room, morning light pouring through the window. For a moment, I thought it was a dream, until I saw it, on my bed, a wedding ring, old, cold, and stained with something that looked like dried blood. When I went downstairs, Lady Eleanor was waiting, smiling. "Ah," she said softly, "it seems she's chosen you." I didn't touch the ring at first. It sat there on the edge of my bed, dull and lifeless in the morning light, as if it didn't belong to this world anymore. But I knew it did, because I had felt her, seen her, heard her voice breaking in the dark. He didn't come. My hands trembled as I finally picked it up. It was freezing, not just cold, the kind of cold that sinks into your bones. The metal was old, scratched, slightly bent, like it had been forced onto someone's finger, or torn off. And the stain on it, it wasn't rust. I knew that much. Ariba. I flinched. Lady Eleanor was standing at my door. I hadn't heard her walk in. "You found it," she said softly. Her eyes didn't leave the ring. Not once. "What is this?" I asked. She stepped closer. Too close. "That," she whispered, "is a promise." I pulled my hand back instinctively. A promise of what? She smiled, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. Of a wedding that must be completed. A chill ran through me. "No," I said quickly. "No, I didn't agree to anything like that. I came here for a job." "And you were chosen," she interrupted. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "Chosen by who?" I demanded. She tilted her head slightly, and for just a moment, her expression changed. "By my daughter." That was the first time she said it so clearly. Not hinted, not avoided. Her daughter, the bride. The rest of the day felt unreal, like I was walking through someone else's life. Servants avoided me even more than before. When I entered a room, conversation stopped. Eyes followed me, not curious, not friendly, afraid, and I began to notice something else. The manor was changing, or maybe I was finally seeing it properly. The walls looked older, darker. Some of the portraits had faces that seemed slightly different from before, more hollow, more to wear. And the mirrors, I stopped looking into them after the third time, because sometimes, for just a second, I wasn't alone in the reflection. That evening, I found Thomas again. He was in the back garden, digging, not planting, not gardening, digging. "Thomas." I called out. He didn't stop, didn't look up. "You need to leave," he said. The words hit me instantly. "Leave? Why? What's happening here?" He shoved the shovel into the ground and turned to me. His face looked worse than before. Paler, more tired. "Because she started again," he said. My throat went dry. "Started what?" He stepped closer, lowered his voice. "The choosing." I shook my head. "This doesn't make any sense. That girl, your lady's daughter, what happened to her?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "She never left the altar." The wind picked up suddenly. Cold, sharp. "What do you mean?" I whispered. Thomas looked past me, toward the manor. 52 years ago, he said slowly, this house was full of people. Music, laughter, a grand wedding. Lady Eleanor's daughter, Eliza Whitmore, was to be married. His voice grew quieter, but the groom never arrived. I felt my chest tighten. Eliza waited, he continued. Hours passed. The guests left. The music stopped, but she stayed there at the altar. He swallowed hard, still smiling. Something inside me twisted. She refused to believe he wasn't coming. Thomas said. Days went by, then weeks. She stopped eating, stopped speaking. The wind howled softly through the trees. And one night, she walked into the forest. And I whispered. They found her, he said. A pause. In her wedding dress. I didn't want to ask, but I had to. Alive? Thomas didn't answer immediately. Then slowly, he shook his head. They buried her, he said. My breath caught, but the wedding never ended. Silence fell between us. What does that mean? I asked. He looked at me, and this time, there was no hesitation. She came back. A sharp chill ran through my body. Not as a bride, he continued, but as something that refuses to be abandoned again. I stepped back. No, that's not possible. She doesn't want to be left alone, Thomas said, his voice breaking slightly. So she chooses. My heart pounded. Chooses what? He stared directly into my eyes. A groom. The world around me felt like it tilted. No, I whispered. No. She said I wasn't him. She said. Thomas's expression changed. What did she say to you? I hesitated, then whispered. She said, You're not him. Thomas went completely still. And then, very slowly, he stepped back. That means... What? I asked. His voice dropped to almost nothing. She hasn't chosen you. A pause. Yet. That night, I didn't leave my room. I locked the door, closed the curtains, turned on every light. But it didn't help, because at exactly midnight, the lights went out, all of them, and in the darkness, I heard it, soft footsteps, outside my door, dragging, slow, uneven. My breath stopped. Then, a knock, once, twice, 3 times. Ariba, my heart dropped. That wasn't her voice. It was mine. Open the door. I backed away slowly. No. The handle began to turn, but the door was locked. For a moment, everything went still. Then, a whisper, right behind me. He came. I turned, and she was there, standing in my room, closer than ever before. The bride, her veil slightly lifted, her broken face almost visible. And this time, she wasn't crying. She was smiling. You brought him, she whispered. My blood ran cold. I didn't. But then, I saw it, in the mirror, behind me, another figure, tall, dark, a man, standing silently, watching us. The bride leaned closer, her voice soft, almost gentle. The wedding, a pause, can finally begin. I couldn't move, not when I saw him, not when I realized he wasn't supposed to exist. The figure in the mirror stood completely still, tall, dressed in black, his face unclear, not hidden, just wrong, like my eyes couldn't fully understand it. And yet, I knew him, not in a way I could explain, but in a way that made my chest tighten, like remembering something I wasn't ready to face. You brought him. The bride's voice echoed softly in the room. I didn't. I whispered. I don't even know who he is. Yes, you do. Her tone shifted. No longer broken. No longer desperate. Certain. And suddenly, the air grew heavier. The man in the mirror moved just a step, but it wasn't normal movement. It was too smooth, too silent, like he wasn't walking, but sliding through reality itself. My breath caught. Then, the lights flickered back on, and everything was gone. The bride, the man, the shadows. I was alone. Or at least, that's what I thought. The next morning, Lady Eleanor called me to the main hall. She was standing beneath a large portrait, one I hadn't noticed before. A wedding painting, a bride in white, a groom in black. But the groom's face had been scratched out. "You've seen him," she said calmly. It wasn't a question. I hesitated, then nodded. Her lips curved slightly. "Good," she whispered. A chill ran through me. "Who is he?" I asked. She turned toward the portrait. "That," she said softly, "is the man my daughter was meant to marry." I stared at the painting. "But you said he never came," I said. Lady Eleanor smiled. "He didn't." A pause. "Not alive." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He died on his way here." The room felt colder. "A carriage accident," she continued, "not far from the forest." Her eyes darkened. "His body was never found." Something clicked in my mind. The forest, the night, the unfinished wedding. He didn't abandon her. I whispered. Lady Eleanor looked at me. "No," she said. "He just never arrived." Silence filled the hall. Then slowly, I turned back toward the portrait, and for a split second, I swear, the groom's face was there, looking at me. That night, everything changed, because that was the night the wedding began. I woke up wearing a dress. Not mine. White. Old. Heavy. A wedding dress. My heart started racing. No, this isn't happening. But it was, because when I looked into the mirror, I wasn't alone. The bride stood behind me, her veil lowered, her face still broken, but calmer now. "You'll help me," she whispered, her voice almost gentle, "just until it's done." "I'm not part of this," I said, backing away, but she didn't move. "You already are." The door opened on its own, and outside, the manor had changed. Candles lit every wall. Soft music echoed through the halls. Shadows moved like guests, but there was no one there, or at least, no one fully visible. As I stepped into the corridor, I felt it. Eyes. Everywhere. Watching. Waiting. The grand hall had been transformed. A wedding aisle stretched across the room. Old wooden benches filled both sides, and sitting on them, figures. Still, silent, not fully human. Guests. At the far end, the altar stood, and beside it, him, the groom. He was clearer now. Still wrong. Still unnatural. But visible. And as I looked at him, that feeling returned. Recognition. Pain. Guilt. "No!" I whispered, and then it hit me, not as a memory, but as a truth. "I know you." The groom tilted his head slightly, and for the first time, he spoke. "You always did." My knees nearly gave out, because his voice, it wasn't unfamiliar. It was mine. "No, that's not possible." The bride stepped forward, her hand gently touching my shoulder. "He was chosen first," she said softly. A pause. "But he didn't stay." My heart pounded violently. "What are you talking about?" And then everything came back. Not from this life. From before. A different time. A different name. But the same place. The same manor. The same wedding. I wasn't a Reba. Not back then. I was him. The groom. And I had tried to leave. I remembered now. The fear. The doubt. The feeling that something was wrong. I tried to escape before the ceremony. Tried to run. But I never made it. The forest. The darkness. Something watching. And then, nothing. "I died," I whispered. The bride's grip tightened slightly. "Yes. And now," she continued softly, "you've come back." My chest felt like it was collapsing. "No, I didn't choose this." "You did," she said, her voice breaking again, the sadness returning. "You left me." The room darkened slightly. The guests shifted. Something in the air changed. "You promised," she whispered. I shook my head, tears falling. "I didn't know. I didn't remember. But you're here now." The music stopped. Silence filled the hall. And slowly, she stepped toward the altar, pulling me with her. "It's time." The groom, no, my past self, stood waiting. And I realized something terrifying. There weren't two of us. There was only one. And if the wedding finished, I wouldn't leave. Ever. The hall had gone completely silent. No wind, no whispers, no movement, just the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. I stood at the altar, between two versions of myself, one that had tried to run, and one that had been dragged back, and in front of me, the bride, Eliza Whitmore. For the first time, she lifted her veil completely, and I saw her, not the broken thing from the shadows, not the hollow face from the corridors, but the girl she used to be, beautiful, young, eyes full of something that hurt to look at. Love, you came back, she whispered. Her voice wasn't twisted anymore. It wasn't layered with something else. It was just her. And somehow, that made it worse. I didn't choose this, I said, my voice shaking. You did, she replied softly. A pause. You just don't remember choosing me. The candles flickered around us. The figure sitting in the hall leaned forward slightly, watching, waiting. What is this place? I asked, my chest tightening. What is this really? Her expression changed. Not angry, not cruel, sad. This, she whispered, looking around slowly, is where promises are kept. The air grew colder. You promised to stay, she said. I didn't. You did, she interrupted. Her voice cracked. That night, the world shifted, not physically, but inside my mind. And suddenly, I remembered everything. Not fragments, not flashes, everything. It wasn't just fear that made me run. It was her. The night before the wedding, something had already started changing. Eliza wasn't herself. She would speak to empty spaces, laugh when no one was there, cry without reason. And once, I saw her reflection in the mirror, smiling, while she wasn't. I was scared. I whispered. She nodded slowly. I know. A tear rolled down her cheek. I was too. Silence stretched between us. And then she stepped closer. You saw it before I did, she said. What? I asked. Her voice dropped. That I wasn't alone anymore. A cold wave ran through my body. The thing in the forest, I whispered. She nodded. It found me before the wedding. The shadows in the hall shifted. And for a moment, I felt it again. That presence. Watching. Waiting. I didn't want to be alone, she said quietly, her voice trembling. So I held on to the only thing I had left. Her eyes locked onto mine. You. The truth hit harder than anything before. You didn't just wait for me, I said slowly. She shook her head. I bound you. The candles flickered violently. The guests twitched. When you tried to leave, she continued, it followed you. My breath stopped. The accident. She nodded again. That wasn't chance. A long pause. I couldn't let you go. Something inside me broke. Not fear, not confusion. Understanding. You killed me, I whispered. Tears streamed down her face. I saved you, she said desperately. The air around us warped slightly. You would have left, she cried. You would have forgotten me, just like everyone else did. Her voice shattered. So I made sure you stayed. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. And now, I asked quietly. Her expression softened again. Now almost peaceful. Now we finish it. The music started again. Slow. Distorted. The guests stood. Not fully human. Not fully anything. Watching. The groom, the version of me from before, stepped forward. And as he did, I felt something impossible. He wasn't separate anymore. He was merging with me. You don't need two lives, Eliza whispered. Just one with me. My thoughts blurred. My body felt heavy, like I was sinking into something deeper, something permanent. This isn't love, I said weakly. She smiled. Broken. It is to me. The veil lowered again. The ceremony had begun. Do you take? The voice wasn't hers. It came from everywhere. From the walls. From the shadows. From the thing that had been waiting all along. That's when I realized the final truth. This was never about love. Not fully. The thing in the forest. It didn't just feed on fear. It fed on promises, on bonds that couldn't break, on souls that refused to let go. And this wedding was its doorway. If it finished, it wouldn't just keep us here. It would spread through every promise, every vow, every forever. I looked at Eliza for the first time, not as a monster, not as a ghost, but as someone who was trapped, just like me. You don't want this, I said softly. Her expression flickered, just for a second. Yes, I do, she whispered, but her voice wasn't certain anymore. You didn't want to be alone, I said. But this, I looked around at the hall, the shadows, the thing watching us. This isn't being together. It's being trapped. Silence. The music faltered. The air shifted. And for the first time, she hesitated. She whispered. The shadows behind her moved violently. Angry. It didn't like that. You promise, it echoed. Her body tensed. I know, she whispered. I stepped closer. And promises can be broken. The entire hall shook. The entity roared. A sound that didn't belong in this world. No, it hissed. Eliza looked at me, tears in her eyes. If I let you go, she whispered, I'll disappear. My chest tightened, and in that moment, I understood everything. This wasn't just a curse. It was a choice. Stay or end it forever. I took her hand. Cold, fading. You won't be alone, I said. Her eyes searched mine. Trust me. For the first time in 50 years, she did. And then she let go. The world shattered. The hall collapsed into darkness. The guests screamed. The shadows twisted violently. The entity shrieked as the bond broke. And then silence. I woke up outside the manor. Morning light, cold air. The building behind me was gone. Just ruins. Old. Empty. Like nothing had ever lived there. No bride. No wedding. No curse. Just silence. I stood there for a long time, until I felt it, something in my hand. I looked down. A ring. The same one. Cold. And then a whisper. Soft. Faint. You stayed? I froze. Because I wasn't alone. Not anymore. Final twist. Sometimes, late at night, when the world goes quiet, I hear her voice again. Not trapped. Not broken. Just waiting. And every time I look in the mirror, for a split second, I see her standing beside me, smiling, because the wedding didn't end. It just followed me home.